All right, an update is happening right now from the NTSB after last month's deadly collision over the Potomac River in D.C. As we monitor this update, I'd like to welcome in Dr. Philip Mann, an aviation expert who served at the FAA over 17 years in a variety of roles. Dr. Mann, thank you so much for your time. Obviously, this update is happening right now, but what stands out to you most from what you've heard so far?
What stands out to me most from what I've heard so far is that they're discussing the differences between what the various altitude instruments may have shown. It's a pretty common thing with like a radar altimeter. It's a digital device and it kind of figures things out for you. But there are barometric instruments that the pilots have to manually adjust themselves as they transition through different parts of the airspace. And if that wasn't adjusted correctly or has some kind of flaw in the system, that would mean that they're looking at a piece of data that gave them the wrong altitude. And that stands out to me as a logical contributor to this accident.
In the wake of this happening, there's certainly been a lot of examination of a lot of different things. And, we're learning that there have been a series of close calls at different airports, really all around the country, not only in recent years, but in recent months. Dr. Mann, do you think that a tragedy like this was bound to happen?
I think that first, a lot of the close call things. It's kind of important to remember that there are parameters that the agency sets that are intended to let you know when something could have happened, so that it triggers an investigation. It triggers people looking into it. I think that with the challenges they're having with air traffic staffing, with the challenges of complex airspace, additional security things, I think that the danger level in particularly contested airspace like DCA is heightened, and there needs to be a focus on it to make sure that air traffic controller shortages and stuff aren't making that more dangerous than it has to be already.
And Dr. Mann, what do you think will change potentially coming out of this tragedy, coming out of this investigation? And how soon do you think some of those changes would need to be implemented?
I suspect we're going to see a lot of changes around air traffic staffing, around air traffic procedures and airman procedures, which is the procedures the pilots use. Because one of the things that you notice is that they never, in the recorder, while they have the Blackhawk identify whether they saw the CRJ, they never say that the CRJ saw the Blackhawk. They never called, air traffic never called to the CRJ to say, hey, do you have the Blackhawk in sight? There may be a change to make that part of the formula, and that could happen very, very, very soon. That could come almost immediately after the final report, or even the interim report for the NTSB. I think staffing changes are going to take a little bit longer because there's been a decades-long staffing shortage for air traffic control. But the FAA recently stood up an enhanced collegiate training initiative to try to widen the pathways people have to get into air traffic control positions by offloading some of the initial training to what is right now a very small number of highly qualified universities that do some of that initial training up front. Because one of the main contributors has just been the limited capacity of the FAA's training academy in Oklahoma City, now allowing universities to take up some of that load and allowing students who pass those programs to then go into facilities to be trained and skip that academy step is going to be huge in getting more people into the positions and get them qualified faster.
And she is now taking questions from reporters. But before we dip back into the press conference, my last question for you, you mentioned the staffing changes, the staffing shortages. There is so much talk now, on a larger scale about air traffic controller shortages. We're also seeing, massive federal government cuts. Do you think there's a connection? Are you concerned that some of these problems may only get worse?
That would be my concern. Up to date, from what I've been able to find, they've pretty much categorically exempted public safety jobs like air traffic controllers have been exempted from some of these huge cuts that are happening. That doesn't mean that they can't happen. And now, if there is such a thing, if they do say start cutting probationary employees that are air traffic controllers, they're basically going to take everybody out of the training pipeline. And if they take everybody out of the training pipeline, to train an air traffic controller takes years, plural, multiple years to train somebody. So if they let all the trainees go right now, they're going to create a greater gap in the qualifications, the greater gap in the capacity to deliver air traffic services. And that gap, no matter what they do, is going to take years and years to fill back up and may never get completely patched up. So that could be catastrophic if they do something like that.
All right, well, aviation expert Dr. Philip Mann, really appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thanks.